The North American region has taken a lot of heat and criticism from analysts, from casters, from figures in the scene, the forums and Reddit. Everything is just disaster for its lack of success, commensurate with the opportunities that have been provided for it by these new organizations, this big money coming in and giving this region a lot of attention. A lot of the criticism is warranted. It's actually pretty embarrassing that the underperformance of the North American region has become, a joke, almost like a community-wide meme. Um, always seeing like NA nade when someone messes up a nade and things like that. It's just kind of just become this huge joke. So Counter-Strike in North America has hit rock bottom, and everything looks bleak. The pictures painted in forums on analyst desk, it's always so dark. And to be completely fair and honest, fully taken part in the criticisms. That you've heard on the desk, and I may actually be one of the region's harshest critics, especially of late. So yesterday, I sent out on a quest of sorts, the grandest quest in all the land. I went to the nearest coffee shop. I braved all the hipsters and all their fedoras, and sat down to contemplate and think about a few reasons why we can be optimistic about North American Counter-Strike moving forward into 2016. And the first thing that we can talk about is, there's players that are poised to become international stars. Um, and the first one is going to be Nitro. Now, he's a guy who's gotten a lot of attention. I know we've talked about him being a star already. I don't think he's quite there yet on the international scale. I think definitely in North American, he's one of our brightest stars. But in terms of internationally, he struggled all last year until the addition of Hiko. He had like a role crisis, an identity crisis on that team. Couldn't really find any consistency, any ground to kind of move forward as a player. Um, and then he ended the year really strong. Once Hiko joined the team, he got put into his more logical role, as closer to like an entry, second in the bomb site. He actually had to end the year at Pro League Season 2 finals out in California. He had probably one of the most dominant individual performances I've seen a North American player have against a European opponent. It was in a loss. It was against Fnatic. It was on cash, but he was just a beast. And he's really really talented in all phases of the round, from entry fragging, from opening up bomb sites to mid round playmaking and 3-on-3s and post plant clutch situations. Very smart player. So if he comes into 2016 the way he ended last year, continues to improve, more importantly, it almost seems like he's at a whole other level on cash than he is on other maps. So if he can translate that play on cash over to the rest of the pool, he's going to be a really dangerous player on the world stage, a huge impact player for Liquid, for the team that's kind of the hope of North America this year so far early on. The other guy I want to talk about is also on Liquid. It's going to be Elige. Highly talented. He's always shown great form online. Struggled last year to replicate that in a LAN and a tournament environment, but he started to do it here and there. So his big thing that he needs to take a step forward with this year is consistency. And now that he has more of a defined role, now that Nitro's come over and he's going to be more defined role, they have that duo set up. I think that's going to help out a lot. Also, the addition of Simple, I'm not going to bring him up here because he's not North American, but the addition of Simple might help to open more things up for him. Just a kill or two from Simpo might give Elige the space. We'll have to see how that addition changes how this team plays. But Elige's best games were against his best games against EU opposition came in like really lopsided losses, and this kind of just shows that he hasn't gotten to that point of comfort where he can have a big impact on winning games quite yet. I mean, he's still an amazing player, but like as an individual, his main role on this team right now is to kind of be the sidekick of Nitro. Now, if he steps up his game to the level that we know he can hit, the level that we've seen occasionally, and does it consistently, all of a sudden he becomes a really, really scary opponent. And even if he doesn't, I mean, here's the thing. Here's the other reason why he's kind of poised to be this international star for me is because even if he doesn't improve individually, he still has such an important role being, buddy buddy with Nitro, being that entry duo to blow up bomb sites. That's like the main strength of Team Liquid, is that really strong, really aggressive front line of Nitro and Elige. So even if he doesn't necessarily reach international stardom on an individual level, his ability to work with Nitro and that chemistry they've developed together is going to be the key to Liquid's success this year on the international stage. Um, Another guy is going to be Kusta, which is no surprise if you've ever heard me talk about any event that Kusta's been to, specifically the MLG Minor for North America. He's going to be at the as well as those other two guys. He's going to be at the major qualifier at the end of February. But I remember I've been hyping this guy up for like a year, but I remember specifically at I think it was the second CEVO slash MLG LAN last year. Before Hiko joined Team Liquid, he asked me and Thorin to make like a hypothetical team. For him to build because he wanted to get back into competing. And I first name I threw out was Cutler, and then the second that I threw out was Kusta, and they both kind of laughed at me a little bit, but I have the last laugh. No, but in all seriousness, like this kid has started his career off in a big way. Um, like he's just been insane, and with the experience that he has on land to have the performances, in his last 20 land maps, he's only had a sub 1.0 HLTV rating twice, and those are at 0.99. So I mean, it's basically just a technicality. His biggest weakness is experience. He has yet to play really dominant. European teams are really good, like the top 10 teams. He's played Luminosity out at the RGN LAN. This was before they made the switch to Taco and FNX, so it was kind of their older roster at the time. But I mean, against Renegades out there as well, he went 31 and 19 in a train match. Against that Luminosity team, the older lineup went 27 and 24 on Mirage. His op is just fantastic. There's a lot of good decision making with it, so he's a guy that's really poised, I think, to take massive steps forward. The big question is going to be: is his team going to help facilitate that, or is his step forward going to come, you know, if he gets poached by another squad? That's kind of the big thing that needs to get answered at the moment. But it'll be really cool to see him at this major qualifier because he's going to be playing better competition than he's ever played before. Also to note about him as well, he's a pretty well-rounded player at the moment in terms of the level his team is at. He can be very effective with the rifles as well as the AWP. So he's not just kind of that one gun wonder. So yeah, the qualifier coming up should give us a better idea. A couple technicalities here at the end of the list. I wanted to mention JDM just because he's gotten to that point where he's playing really good with the AWP internationally. He's competing with all the best stoppers, across the pond. So that's really cool to see. But he's got to make a jump. If he wants to make that next level to being like a truly international star, like a really good international player, he's got to improve his rifles, his M4 especially is not that strong, which is a little bit scary because the CT side is where your economy is a little bit is much more shaky. So he's got to improve his rifles, both his AK and his M4. I think actually his second best weapon is like the P250 or one of the pistols. So that's not good. And then the last two are going to be Skadoodle and Shroud, because obviously towards the end of 2015 they had a really rough close to the year. Both of them were hitting slumps. They weren't the players we'd come to see over the course of last summer. So it was really good to see them their first event this year. That they both played well for Cloud9. Um, so I mean, at least carry that forward into the year. The next reason to be optimistic is going to be the development of young talent in the region. And one of the ways in which this scene has really struggled is, we've seen a lot of teams shuffling the older players, recycling some of the players who've been in the professional scene. I've never really thought it was too much of an issue until, just last year when we were not seeing any new faces. We're not seeing new opportunities really outside of Shroud, maybe a couple more, but um, the advent of Valve's minor system is going to help that in North America. It helps it in all the regions, but giving these lower tier players, the non-professional teams, an opportunity to compete against each other, make a name for themselves as individual players, as teams, that's huge. But just the amount of new players that have brought in that don't have professional experience, and if they do, maybe it's just a season. It's not much. Cloud9 brought in Stewie, that was a big one. Obviously, Complexity has Shinobi from the old Denial. Also, TSM have Sick and Vice. They're on trial for that squad at the moment. Those players are both from the old Denial squad who won Premier last season. Def also came over from the UK, who's probably an experienced UK player. Don't know too much about him, but I mean, it's the UK scene, which if there's a scene that's going to be lesser than the North American scene, it's going to be UK. Sorry, guys. And then the other one is Enemy. Last season was most of those players' first season in professional. And normally when you see a new team with new players come into professional division, they get stomped. They get absolutely crushed. Enemy was actually competing for a playoff spot towards the end of last season. So, they kept around a 500 mark on their record, which is just good for a team that just barely gets into, or I mean, just barely has experience in the professional scene. So that was really nice. And the reason why this is so important to have this young talent is we need to get new blood in the professional scene. At this point, I mean, there's only so long that you can say someone has potential, right? And there's a lot of players currently in the professional scene who have, we've been saying for 3, 4 seasons now that have the potential to be good players, but at this point, we know what they're going to give us. I mean, it's a harsh truth, but we know what they're capable of. There's not much if they're not showing us anything now after this long in the professional division, then this is just what they are, and we have to accept that. So now that we're getting new blood, I mean, there's a lack. I know Thorne made a video of it last year. There's a lack of superstars in North America. We don't really have. We have like Skadoodle and Hiko. I mean, Shroud, I wouldn't put him up in superstar, but I mean he's reached that level, but not consistently enough to like really earn that title. Um, so we need to get these new guys in to see what they're going to give us, to see if one of them is a superstar. That if we put him in the right environment, if we give him the right teacher, the right mentoring, if we give him the right experience, he can become that superstar because we need more of those. So some of these new names that you're going to see in Pro League in North America, you know, by the end of the year, they could become, at least a regional star, and then maybe, maybe next year they take that leap into the internationals and the national stardom. Um, and here's the thing: when you're watching them too, don't sit there and be like these guys suck. Like don't automatically assume that because TSM picked up Sick and Vice, because Cloud9 picked up Stewie, that they're going to be great right away. That very rarely happens. I can think of very few examples over the course of a decade where someone just came into the professional scene and was just a dominant force. Normally, that progression takes place over a number of seasons. They get really good in this role, and then maybe they change teams. Maybe some of their players get swapped out, and all of a sudden they have to adopt a new role, or they have to adjust the way they play, and then that's when they have to work on that, and that's when they build up more strength and more strengths. So there's these steps that it takes over the course of multiple seasons. So I mean, those are just players over the course of this year. You're going to want to see them improve gradually, and maybe someone just shoots up. Maybe someone's just a psycho and just automatically starts dominating. We'll have to see. Another reason to be optimistic is the Brazilian example. We have Luminosity in our region. They are a top 4 team. They are an incredible team, not only in the level they're at right now, but just in how they progressed over the course of last year. Um, and I'm not going to call them a North American team and that they're going to be the hope and they're a reason to be optimistic because if LG wins a major, I'm not going to ever say that North America just won a major. But they're an example. They're like the standard that North American teams can look at and say this team got from nowhere to top 4 team in like the space of a year, essentially. So what did they do? How do they practice? How do they prepare? You know, how are they playing? Start taking some of the things that Luminosity's doing that you're seeing when you play against them in practice and adopt them to your own squad. Adjust some things for your players. But they're the shining example that teams in North America really need. If I'm a North American team, I'm practicing against them as much as humanly possible. Um, and the one other thing that Luminosity provides that the North American scene has been missing is they have respect of all the North American teams. And this was an issue dating back to even when I was competing in the North American professional scene in 2014. The biggest issue I saw among teams and among players, some players obviously this is a bigger issue with than others, but there's always been a lack of respect among North American players and teams. And the issue with that is that when you don't respect your opponent as an individual or as a team, you don't learn anything. If you get killed, it's like, oh, it's online, or oh, what a dumb play, or you make an excuse. If you don't respect this guy, you make an excuse, and all of a sudden you're not learning from it because you're just writing off why you died. Same goes for the team. Maybe they execute some sick kind of strat, and it just feels really puggy to you, and you're like, this team is just not taking this seriously, so I'm not going to take it seriously anymore. And then all of a sudden the scrim's ruined, and you're not learning anything. But Luminosity now, with their accomplishments over the past few months, has earned that respect. So when teams play against them, they're going to be looking at it and they're going to be saying these guys can contend with the best in the world. So when I get killed by them, when I know someone's made a play on me, when I know this strategy completely confused me, I need to find a way to learn and adjust to what just happened there. So that's huge. I can't even understate how big that is for the North American scene is to have this team. Because even when we had Iowa Power, at the top of their game, like they only really had like one small stretch where they were competing at the top. But even when they were just dominant in North America, um, they were never competing internationally. So it's this different kind of respect that Luminosity has earned that we haven't seen a North American team really have in CS:GO. And then also, I mean, continuing with the Brazilians, the other team is Games Academy, who just bodied North American teams on their way to a major berth. They essentially just stole a spot from North American, not stole, but just swiped a spot away from under the rug, I guess you could call it, from the North American teams, just rolling their way through the MLG Last Chance qualifier. They went 6-2 in maps for the entire bracket, and now they're going to be at the MLG qualifier. And this is a team who was in main last season. Now they're in Premier. So that's now two Brazilian teams who have moved to North America, and in the setting that North American teams have been struggling in for years, haven't been able to improve. These two teams have done it. Obviously LG in a massively more important scale. We'll see how far Games Academy can get. This major qualifier once again is going to be a big test for them. But it's just insane the amount of improvement that we've seen out of these teams that we haven't seen out of North American teams. So whatever practice habits these Brazilians are having, that needs to get adopted immediately into our region. And if it does, then I have no doubt we'll see some improvement. And then the last one is imported leadership. It's not a surprise. It's not a secret that leadership in North America is pretty much non-existent. From the um, from Days and Steel, the whole I Power ordeal. Sean was basically our only in-game leader for all of last year, and he decided to retire, and now he came back, and he's with a new team. We'll see how that goes. But outside of those three guys, actually outside of just Sean, since the other two can't play, we have no leadership. There really isn't any. And I'm not even talking specifically about tactics or strategies. I'm talking about being able to have the four teammates on your squad respect you enough for you to lead them in a practice, for you to set times, for you to say, all right, guys, we had this match won. We should have won this, and then we collapse at the end. Let's watch the demo. Let's figure out what happened. Where was this collapse? Let's watch this demo as a team. We suck on Mirage. Let's watch some Mirage demos as a team. Let's figure out ways that we can play this map. A couple setups that we really like that we can practice tonight, and figure out how to play it. And this issue, I mean, at some point we're going to have these leaders rise up from the North American region. They're going to have to be homegrown. But at least for now, the two teams have kind of solved this. CLG brings in PETA to be a coach, and NRG has Gabi, who is a very well-respected leader in Europe, who just left Mouse Sports or got cut from Mouse Sports, whatever it was, and now he's over here with this team. And both of those squads have shown some pretty good early results with these guys very very early on. CLG just won their most impressive BO3 against a European team, against G2, which is the ex-Titan squad. I mean, they're not world beaters in themselves, but I don't think CLG wins that a couple months ago. Just outside of that, even their series against Dignitas, they got blown out in the first map at Kabul. They had a nice comeback. They ended up losing the map anyways, but 2 months ago, CLG definitely doesn't make that comeback. So PETA's kind of instilled this mental toughness early on that they're starting to develop, which was really cool to see. Energy just qualified for Counterpit, which isn't a massive accomplishment, but the two of the North American players on the team, Silent and Justin, they went 8-14 with Method last year. They weren't even really competing. Peter being the fifth, he's a good talented player, but he hasn't even done anything since MLGX games that you can say we've been super impressed by. He's kind of bombed out of a couple teams he's been on in the meantime, so that's good early results for Gabi with that squad. And I actually had two pretty cool Steam messages from these teams. The first one was from JDM. Just I want to say it was like 3 weeks ago he messaged me, and he just hit me up out of the blue. It was at like 3 in the morning. He's like, "Yo, you're gonna be impressed with us this year. We've had a sick practice so far. We've been spending like 8 to 10 hours practicing as a team, going over demos as a team before we start practice every day. He's just like talking to me about all these improvements that they can feel early on. Starting to come, like the confidence that they've started having because of these good practices, how Pete has been helping them develop, how he's helping them with in-game leading, pretty much taking that role. So that was really cool to hear from JDM with that kind of confidence that he seems to be instilled due to the change in their practice habits because of bringing PETA in. The other one, I believe it was Silent who said this, and he mentioned that his first conversation with Gabi was Gob saying, they had like a nice conversation, and Gob just straight up told him, like, listen, sometimes in practice you're gonna hate me because I'm a hard ass in practice. He's like, you're just gonna hate me at times. That's just the way it's gonna be, and that's really cool to hear because we can all complain about just touching on Days and Steel, how you guys, the community kind of perceives them as these assholes. Never, their team always hated it and everything like that. And whatever you think, having a leader like that, for me as a former player, that was like my favorite thing in the world. I wanted a hard ass leader, because those guys hold themselves equally as accountable as they do for the rest of the team. They expect you to come in and know what you're going to do, and they're going to bitch at you if you don't. And if you get bitched at, I guarantee the next day you come in and you have the smoke down, or you have the strategy down that you messed up the day before. If I was ever to go back in time to 2014 and compete, I would be begging Days every day to get me on an iBuyPower team, whatever team he was on, because that's the kind of leader I would want to play under. So the fact that Gob's coming in and he has that attitude, just like saying you're gonna hate me and I don't care, really cool for that team. So as low as North America is right now, we basically spent all of 2015 coping with the fact that we lost four of the best players in our region. That was the story of 2015 for North American Counter Strike, and you could see the devastation it had. In 2016, I don't think we're going to reach some amazing level. I don't think we're going to win a major. I don't even know if we're going to get a team into the finals of a major. But there are going to be great strides taken, I think, by a couple teams. Um, that will help us compete internationally. I think there was going to be a much better showing in 2016 internationally. It may not happen immediately. It may not be at this first major. It's going to take some time. But I think I do actually think that these are some legitimate reasons that you guys, and myself included, can be optimistic about what's coming in the North American scene this year.